This is looking good. I'm so glad. Last time we had technical difficulties and it says that we are live on Facebook. So welcome, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, lovely people, depending on where you are zooming in from. I have got the lovely Anne McKeown next to me, and I can't wait to introduce you to this lovely lady. Anne and I met, I believe, through LinkedIn. Is that correct, Anne? Yeah. I saw, I heard a little bit about your story. We had this really beautiful connection, and I remember it was actually, I was on at Bolt Hill, and we had this really horrible connection, but we did manage to get the story out of you. And I was like, I really do want to introduce you to my audience. So before I get further into the story, I'm going to get you to do that. Do you want to introduce yourself, Anne? Welcome.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much for the invitation. It's lovely to be here, and I really treasure the work that you do. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you.
So nice to be part of it. So my name is Anne McKeown. You can obviously guess I'm from Scotland.
I love the accent.
Yeah, thank you. Live in Sydney. I've been here for 14 years with my husband and 2 daughters, and absolutely, we just love it. We feel we're living in paradise.
Oh, we so are. I always count myself lucky. It's incredible. So, and you have got quite a remarkable story, may I say, and I always do ask my guests permission if I can ask anything and everything before we get live. So I really want to share the story because I feel there is so many golden nuggets and so many learning opportunities for all of us in there, and it's incredibly touching too. So would you mind sharing a little bit about Rob and the relationship that you had and what happened? Because I don't even know where to start. There are so many aspects to it, so I'm going to try to do this chronologically. Tell us a little bit about how you guys met and what your relationship was like.
Yeah, so look, I was in my late 20s. I was working for a large corporation in the UK and really doing well on the career ladder. And I met Rob at a ceilidh, which is like a barn dance. When I was younger, I used to go all the time to these ceilidhs because they were a great way to kind of meet people and more fun. I wasn't really so much into discos and nightclubs. Yeah. And they were held on what was an old ferry on the River Clyde in Glasgow, and they converted it into this sort of ceilidh venue. And anyway, one night we had all these sailors had come in, and so we were dancing with them all and having lots of fun and everything. And that's where I met Rob and, a group of his friends. And at the time, I just felt my life was perfect. If you were to say, how would you like your, I was able to tick all the boxes around career, family, relationship, finances, health and wellness, traveling. It was just a really special time in my life.
And how many years did Rob and you have together, if I may ask?
Well, we didn't even have 1 year actually.
Wow.
It was a very short romance in that we probably had about 8 months. And then I had to go to London on a trip. And when I came back from that trip, I discovered that he'd been in a car crash. And do you want me just to tell the story, or do you?
Absolutely. Please tell it. It's because I know what's to come, so I don't want to keep interrupting with the questions and keep interrupting with the flow. So please just tell the story, because this is really so incredible what happened thereafter. I'll leave that up to you.
Okay,
how much you want to share.
Look, I just had the best time with him. We had a lot of fun. He was very caring, probably the first partner I'd ever had who kind of really made me feel special and didn't try and change me to be something he wanted. And also a man that wasn't threatened by a successful career woman. And so all of that at the time for me was fantastic. Anyway, I had to go to this trip down to London from Glasgow. And when I came back, I discovered that he'd been in this car crash. And his friend had phoned and told me, and I said, well, you have to tell me, where is he? What hospital is he in? I have to go and see him. And, I was just distraught. And his friend said to me, you can't go and see him. And I was like, what do you mean I can't go and see him? And he said his wife is with him. So he was leading this double life. And at first I couldn't believe it.
And this was the very first time that you found out about that.
Yeah, and of course I went through all the thing of how could I have been so stupid? How could, you know, when something goes wrong, we tend to blame ourselves rather than think, well, actually, he was being quite deceitful. But at the time, he'd actually talked about the ship he was on, the British government were going to sell, and he talked about moving, because he lived in England, moving to Glasgow, to getting a job at Prestwick Airport, to moving in with me. Like, we'd made all these plans. It wasn't I didn't see a future with him, and he saw a future. We talked about all those things. So that was all in my mind, and there were no signs. I mean, he was obviously just very clever at hiding it, and what his friend told me after was he was very unhappy. He was going to get a divorce, and you know, but you don't want that. That's I didn't want to hear that from someone else, and then so I went into a real depression after that, as you can imagine. And I know an interesting thing happened at the same time. My boss that week, when I'd been in London, had actually said to me that people I'd worked with for 8 years, helping them build their businesses, the company wanted to get rid of them and bring in managers, because they were licensees, and the licensees took a third of the profit. But if we brought in managers, we could pay them minimum wage. And I said to my boss, but I can't do that. I've worked with these people for 8 years, helping them build their business, and they all have a stance in the local community, and I have this connection with them. And you want me now to go tell them that we're getting rid of them? And he said to me, well, if you don't, someone else will. And and so I just felt it was like two men that I really admired and was very fond of and had beautiful relationships with, just suddenly in the same week, they both
showed very different faces.
And so that added to the depression, because then I was thinking, what am I doing in this corporation that's all about money? And I thought, you know, I was making a difference, and you know, I was very ambitious, and but I kind of started then to realize that I had a few blind spots, and didn't really like what I was seeing and the situation I'd ended up in, and so anyway, I just went into this depression and didn't want to go to work or do anything. And my mum called the doctor, and of course, as doctors do, they gave me pills. And you know, I say that the pills kind of they dealt with they were able to make me function, but they didn't deal with the pain. And nobody thought to solve the problem. And then, of course, I was very ashamed, because then I was somebody's mistress. And then
from living this absolute in love, and you think you've got the perfect life, to then all of a sudden find out it was a very different story. Can I just ask, did his wife ever find out about you? Did you ever talk? No. Did you ever get in touch at all, or you don't know?
One thing happened when he was in the hospital. I ended up, I got it because it was a hospital in England, because when I went to London, he'd gone home. And so I said to his friend, please just let me at least speak to the hospital. So he did give me the number. And when I phoned, I spoke to a nurse, and I just said, tell me what happened. And she told me all the injuries. And then I said, and she said, who said called? And I said, just say it's a friend from Scotland, because obviously I didn't want to say who I was. And and she said to me, he won't hear you because he's unconscious, but I'll tell his wife. And so again, there was this, and actually when I phoned the hospital, his first name, like what I called him, wasn't his real first name. They said, we haven't got somebody by that first name, we've got somebody by that surname. And I said, that'll be him. And you know, so a lot unraveled afterwards. But I also I never wanted to be part of that situation, and I never have wanted to add to another woman's agony. I mean, she was dealing with a dead husband or a sick husband.
I understand.
So
that speaks volumes about you, though, if I may say so, because this is, you know, this is a very tricky situation to be in, to not know about that, and to find out that he had an accident and he was still in a coma. So there is still this this hope, I need to solve this, I need to know about this, what was going on, and to go through that. And but he did not make it. And how long did that take till you found out that he actually passed?
Yeah, nobody actually told me that he died, so I think it was kind of seen as I was erased, like if there was a picture, a photo, I was erased out of the picture.
Let's not talk about that.
Yes, and the first that I knew was I received an envelope. I remember it the day vividly, because I started to drink too much and I was in bed and I was feeling sorry for myself, and I had a wooden floor in my hallway, and I heard this thud, and it was the postman putting envelopes through the letterbox, in the days before we had technology, emails. And so I got up to see what this heavy envelope was, and I opened it up, and it was an invitation to a church service. And I thought, they've put it in, because I was in an apartment, I thought they've put it through the wrong letterbox. Yeah. And anyway, I thought I'll open it up and see what number it's meant to be. I had my name on it, but I thought I'll open it and see if it's for someone else. Yeah. And as I took it out, it was a card with an invitation to the funeral. And there was, his name was Rob, there was Rob's face, dressed in his sailor white uniform, smiling
just
at
with
me.
A different name. Yeah.
And then on the other side, it had the date and the venue and everything of the funeral service, but it had happened the week prior. So I had missed it.
Wow.
Yeah, so they said, and then I opened it up, and inside it said, the pastor asks everybody to pray for Rob and his wife and his child. So he had a baby as well, which I didn't know about. So
wow.
And of course,
how old? Do you know how old that child was?
A toddler. What I heard, about 18 months. I think his friend told me, young.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was a lot to deal with, if I may say so, and that's probably very much underrated. I don't even have the right words to express what you must have felt in that moment. And I was just this week listening to a really intense podcast about healing grief from a neuro perspective, and it's by Andrew Huberman. And I don't know if you heard of him, but it's just really fascinating. And he talks about the similarities in grief and depression, and how so often, they tend to just give you the tablets and antidepressants. And the amount of times I hear that people have been offered tablets, antidepressants for grief, where they actually don't help in grief at all. They may help in depression, but they don't help in grief. It was so fascinating. I really urge anyone to watch this podcast. I actually shared it in my group, Loving Life After Loss, for anyone who's interested. But coming back to your story, you said you fell into some sort of depression after that, which I can really understand, with everything, with all the news that you have been dealing with, and having all these hopes and the future to look forward and the perfect job, and then everything comes crumbling down within weeks of each other, like at the same time, and the trust that you had got crushed, like professionally and personally. I can't even imagine the amount of times you must have asked yourself all these questions. However, what really strikes me, and the reason why I wanted to bring you on camera, is what you did with it. I'm so blown away by the journey that you have chosen afterwards. Please tell us, how long did it take you to make the decision to come out of it, and what did you do? I'll let you
well, thank you for that. It took me about 3 or 4 months of just back and forth. I didn't really go back to work. I kind of did a bit of work from home, but I was just constantly on sick leave, because I just faced my boss or the situation or whatever. I didn't know how to really handle that. And I just knew I needed to get away, because people didn't understand. Like, people were saying, oh, well, he was a liar and a cheat, you're better off without him. Or, well, you weren't together that long.
It's not a flick the switch solution.
Yeah. Or, oh, thank God you weren't married. Or, I mean, there was just all this, and people were trying to be kind, but it was not at all what I wanted to hear. Nobody understood it. And so then I got to the stage where I just decided not to talk about it and not to tell people. And because it was easier for everyone else to think I had moved on, because they didn't know how to deal with my grief and depression. And so I thought, everyone else is busy with their own lives. I just and I just need to kind of get over this, you can try. Anyway, it sounds altruistic, but it's actually not. Like, what I decided to do, I had to get away, and I saw an advert to do some volunteering. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to rent out my apartment. I quit my job. I gave back my company car. I just kind of get rid of everything and started fresh. And I just said to my family and friends, I'm just going to go and volunteer for 6 months in Africa. And it was really special, actually, because I was able to, taking myself out of the environment was good, because it took me away from all the memories. Because everywhere in my apartment there were things, I had a box full of like pressed roses and love letters and photographs, and it was because I went through a stage thinking, did I imagine it all? And then, but I had all this proof that it was real, but I kind of had to put the lid on that box as well. And I signed up for an organization called SEE. It's SEE, and it stands for the Surgical Eye Expedition. And basically what they do is they have volunteer surgeons and nurses come from the US to underprivileged villages in poor countries, and they do cataract operations for free. Wow. So people that were blind and had double cataracts could then suddenly see.
That's incredible. It gives me goosebumps. It's so nice.
My role was it was good because I was able to use a lot of my experience. I was project manager, and so that involved fundraising to get money to buy ointments and creams and things. We took young people from the UK who would otherwise have been in jail, like young prison, to show them that they actually had a good life in comparison to these really poor African people. And it gave them a purpose and a sense of belonging and community and a different look at life. And it was transformational for all of us. And I felt that I was able to use my skills to help someone else. And thankfully, I had enough money that I was able to go and volunteer, and I didn't need to worry about finances. But the big problem was I did it for 6 months, and then I went back home. And as soon as I went back home, everything hit me again. So it was like I had put a lid on it. But then, and it was the same things. People were saying, I hope you had a nice holiday. And I was like, it wasn't a holiday. It was this really amazing experience.
It was a very on purpose change to scenery to get over things and move through things. And then they hit you right in the face when you come back. I totally understand that. I think though, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'd like to hear your perspective on this. And I feel that a change in scenery, a change in perspective is really, really helpful on our healing journey. I did the exact same thing, not that we volunteered in Africa, but after Rob passed, so my husband was called Rob as well, which is quite interesting. I took the boys and traveled around the world for 60 days with the boys. I just really needed to create new and happy memories and a bit of a different background to it all. But I really wanted to create a change in scenery and get away from all these first milestones without him, like Christmas and New Year's and birthdays, and also all the expectation, like you so nicely described it as well, how people feel that you should be or shouldn't be, or what you should be doing or shouldn't be feeling. Like nobody understands unless they have gone through it. So for me, it was one of the healthiest choices to take the boys and go traveling. Yet I also vividly remember what it felt like coming back home. It was not that everything hit me in the face and everything was there. So I wanted to know, did you feel a difference though? I totally understand when you say you came back and it still hit you in the face, but did you feel a difference, that something shifted within you from these 6 months away, or did you feel like you were completely back to square one?
Oh no, I had definitely got a different perspective, and I had definitely moved on as far as emotionally. What hit me was, well, one, I had to go back living with my parents because my apartment was still rented out. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a partner. I didn't have, it was sort of all those losses around me. And it was then like, well, what do I do now? It was that. And by then I was 30. And, what do you do as a single woman at 30 who's been through that, and I didn't want to go back in and work for a big corporation. So a whole lot of I suppose it sent me on the journey of discovering my values, and what do I want my life purpose to be. And I didn't really, often we fall into things like the job I had fallen into, and even Rob had fallen into, and so it made me kind of stop and take track. But I wouldn't say at that point, after 6 months, I was healed. In fact, I know I wasn't, because I was being very sharp with everyone. Like there was, I think there was anger there that and I hadn't been really allowed to show that anger and frustration at, you know, who did he think he was, and why did he do that to me and to us, and why am I meant to just now get on with life? I wanted, you know, a release.
I think that there's a few things I'd like to say at this stage. I mean, first of all, I so often talk about the hidden gifts in adversity, and I believe what you just said, you know, the having to stop or having to getting this opportunity presented to stop and really go on a path of finding yourself and finding out about your values, who you want to be, what you want to do in life. You know, that to me is such a typical gift in adversity, you know, something that we probably haven't asked for, not in that way in particular, but that when it comes, we can either deny it or we can actually receive it as a gift. And I truly see that you definitely received it as a gift, you know, even if it probably didn't feel like such at that very moment. And the other thing, without knowing Rob, without knowing any details about his life outside of you, like his family life, you know, it is so easy, really easy to judge for people on the outside, but nobody has lived his life. Nobody knows what he was like, what his relationship was like, and what he must have felt like when he met you. You know, it might have been this, oh my God, that's exactly what I've been looking for all my life. And what do I do with this life now? And I don't want to hurt anyone. And, you know, sometimes it's easier than we think to slip into a double life without any intention of hurting anyone, without any intention of deceiving anyone. And I'm not trying to take his side and saying he was a saint, he didn't do anything wrong. Obviously, it is wrong to lie and to deceive people. But I'm also always saying, there's always at least 2, if not 3 sides to the story, and there's also you know, it's really hard
look, I would totally
such
agree.
that we don't know his part of the story or his wife's part of the story. So
I don't think any of it was intentional. I think that's exactly what happened. I think he met me and there was a spark and you know, an attraction, and he chose not to tell me, and maybe didn't think it would go as far or as deep as it did. And you know, so I don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to cover anything up and say it was absolutely okay, but I'm always saying there is, you know, intention and absolutely.
And
I think people go into things, I mean, even people that get divorced, you go into relationships with the best of intention. I think we all go into things with the best of intention and then can suddenly
at least let's hope so,
swept away, you know. So no, I actually think that too, and it gives me solace, because I think for a long time I went through, God, he didn't love me, he just used me. And then I would read some of the letters and the fact that he was talking about moving to Glasgow and things, and I thought, well, I'll never know, so what's going to give me the most peace, you know? And I because we all know that our emotions come from the stories that we tell ourselves. And so if I'm telling myself the worst story, I'm going to keep feeling worse. But if I can look at the good side, I love
that you say that.
You know, the story that actually there's that, and I know it's cliche to say that, saying that it's better to have loved and lost than never loved at all. And that's the way I look at it now. Like, that was a really special time in my life and set me off in a whole new trajectory. It was the most painful time in my life, but I'm now actually quite thankful, because I might have still just stayed with that corporation and just been another cog in a wheel.
So Anne, when you came back after the 6 months in Africa, tell us what was the next thing that happened, because I know that was not your only trip that you did.
So look, I had Christmas and everything with the family and whatever, and then beginning of the new year, everyone went back to work. They were all making New Year goals. And I just felt really lonely. I felt like I was surrounded by friends and family, but I just felt in myself really lonely. And that wasn't their doing, it was mine. And so I just decided to go away again. And it was funny because I say everyone around me thought I was this adventurous globetrotter that could afford to do and go and all this voluntary work. But I saw myself as a scared runaway. You know, I just saw myself as I got a bolt. I can't cope with all the memories and, you know, local pubs. I'd go into a local pub and remember a night we had there, and I just, it was overwhelming. So this time I went to India, and I actually went to teach English to young girls because I had this thing about, you know, teaching women and young women, and in particularly underprivileged women. And when I got there, the school was actually probably more wealthy than I thought it. I thought it was really going to help the poor, but these girls actually were getting a good education already. But one thing that they did do was they used to go and visit a leper colony every month, and they would help the people with leprosy. And so I went with them to that, and that was a real eye-opener. I almost felt as if at the time God was trying to say to me, well, you think your life's bad, just you wait till you get here. And it was pretty confronting. I had to learn the act of acceptance, of giving when I didn't really want to. I found some of the visions a bit abhorrent. And I watched these young Indian girls just give and chat and share and care, and without a second thought, because
incredible,
the poor look after each other.
You
know, and so that was another huge turning point for me. In the whole experience.
How long did you stay in India?
I was there for 6 months.
Okay, and then when you came back, similar experience, or what
it becomes a bit like Groundhog Day, because exactly the same thing happened. I went back home, moved in with my parents, saw my friends again. Everyone was telling me all the TV shows I'd missed, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is just shocking. I just didn't fit in anymore. I just and I felt mentally very exhausted. Like, I think with grief, you carry this weight. And although I was going through the motions and I was learning all these experiences, I hadn't actually healed. I was, you know, probably I was still in a very sad state. So anyway,
did you feel that the entire time when you were away, or did it just sort of wait for you when you come back?
Well, it came in bursts. There were times when what I was doing, I was like, oh, this is wonderful and inspiring, and I would love it. And then I remember at one point I was in Old Delhi, and I actually got an infection in my stomach, and I was lying on an old straw mattress, and I just felt so sick. And at that point, the kind of depressed feelings all came back. I was feeling sorry for myself. Why am I doing this? And then the thoughts of Rob, and then I'd lost my job, I'd given up my job. And so I went in and out of it. I think it's a roller coaster, isn't it? And it got to the stage, if I was having a good day, then that was a tick, you know, but so no, I went back home, and I still wasn't ready to stay, and a friend of mine had invited me to go to Australia to visit her, and she lived in New Zealand, so we met in Australia, and then we went to rent a place. She actually didn't have much money, and so she wanted to stay and rent and work, and I was happy to do that, because I thought, well, I'll look around and I'll enjoy seeing Australia. But we ended up hiring a room in a house with this woman who, she was just lovely and had a really nice piece about her, and the place was lovely. It was out at Ashfield, but this was in the 90s when Ashfield wasn't as posh as it is today. And anyway, it turned out that she was a Catholic nun. And in the evenings, while my friend was working, her and I would sit and we would chat and we'd have all these conversations.
Wow.
And she helped out at a drop-in centre for St Vincent de Paul, where she helped people that had alcoholism and Down syndrome and people that lived on the streets and whatever. And so one day she said to me, could I help, because they were short-handed? And I thought, oh, I don't want to do any more volunteer work. I just want to have a holiday. I just want to enjoy the sun and sand and sea and anyway. And she said, that would be great, I'll see you in the morning. And she didn't really give me a chance to say
all right.
So anyway, I went along, and again it was another experience of, wow, how hard life is for some people. And there were a few situations there that were quite confronting. You know, people there was one woman who was an alcoholic, and she came in one morning and she was crying. She had sores all over her feet. She was living on the streets, and she stank of urine. And I found it quite tough to deal with, actually.
Yeah.
And when I went back that night, I said to this Sister Helen, we called her Sister Hell, Sister from Hell. And she, you know, she was beautiful. And I said to her, I can't go back. I can't do that. You know, it was just, I'm not a nurse. And she said to me, well, thank you. We really appreciate that you helped today. And she said, if you could say a prayer for that woman, because her daughter committed suicide last night.
Oh, wow.
So it was just all my trips were, and it was just like, I felt God was just trying to say to me, look, there's a lot of pain in the world. And when we can share it, you know, problem shared is a problem halved. When we can listen, which is what you're doing with your beautiful work, when we can let people know they're not alone, again, which you're doing, all of those things came home. And what she did one of the nights, she said to me, and I see that you're doing all the right things. And she said, and you're smiling with your mouth, but you're not smiling. You're not smiling with your eyes. It's going to make me teary. And she said, there's something going on. And she said, it's her love that makes me teary. She said, what is it that made you go to Africa and India and come here? And she reached out and she took my hand, and it just all exploded, and it all came out.
Wow.
Yeah. And then she had another lady who was a counsellor, a grief counsellor, who was also a nun, but they didn't live in a convent or anything. They worked in the community. And so I went to see her, and she helped me unpack it and deal with it.
That's incredible. So, and in my little preview about you, we mentioned a man called Ben.
Yeah.
When and how did Ben appear on the scene? Tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, well, this is a lovely end to the story, because on my journey home, I thought, because I travelled on and off then, it was about 3.5 years. And I thought, right, I need to kind of go home and settle now and give romance another chance, because all my traveling, I didn't want anything to do with men, and I had a hard heart, and I was cold and angry. And anyway, they helped me turn that around. And then a friend of mine was getting married, and she had asked me to be her bridesmaid. And so I went home for that. And Ben was actually an old friend, a part of the group that I used to hang around with, but we never really had anything in common. And we re-met at this friend's wedding. And he said to me that day, I hear you've been traveling, what have you been doing? Where I was so ambitious and career-minded, he'd been brought up in Swaziland in Africa. He was English, but his father worked for the government over there. So he had a very holistic approach to life, and wasn't really interested in money and status and stuff like that. And he'd gone and done an MBA. So when we met at this wedding, I had gone all bohemian, he'd gone all corporate, and it was like we completely switched places. Anyway, we started to talk about, he said, what was your favorite place? And I said, Africa. And he started to talk about the sunsets and the poverty and the deserts. And I was like, oh my God, this is the first person that has understood the spiritual side to these countries that nobody else got. And so there was definitely a connection and a flicker and then he asked me to go on a date with him to go sailing, and I thought, oh well, I can do that. And the day that he met me, in that morning, he'd actually been offered a job in Spain because he'd done his MBA in Spain. And he said to me, you're not going to believe this. He said, this is a day that's going to change my life, because he said, I've been offered this job and I've met you. And he said, I just have this feeling that this is a day that's changing the rest of my life, you know. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And then he said, if I take the job, would you come with me? And I was like, oh my God. And everybody around me said, it was interesting because everybody around me said, oh my God, she's going to do the same thing again. Here we go again. You know, it was like, I was being
how would that be the same?
Blamed for jumping in too quick, or for being too trusting, or it was just people's judgments can be quite harsh.
Really interesting. And it didn't cross my mind for 1 second. I can't see any similarities here.
Yeah.
So different. Yeah.
And I had known him from before. So we did go to Spain, but he went to Zaragoza, and I said, I'm going to go to Salamanca, and I'm going to learn the language, and I'm going to see if I like Spain and if I like you. And we had dated by then for about 3 months.
Yeah.
And by then I was 32. And that when I had finished doing my course, he proposed and we got married.
Oh, here comes my cat. Come here. Sorry.
And we've been together 25 years.
Oh my God, I love this. I love a happy ending. Oh my God, that makes my day. Thank you so much for sharing that. It was really, really beautiful. And I know we went quite in depth with your entire story. We're way over time.
Sorry.
But no. I'll let you go because I really wanted you to tell the entire story, and it's absolutely fine. But what I would like for our viewers to hear as well, I know for a fact that you wrote a book about all of that. Is that right?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, it was actually Ben that encouraged me to do it. So he said, when we got married and we were living in Spain, I was pregnant with our first daughter. And he said to me, why don't you write your story as a way to pass time and a healing exercise? And he's always been so supportive of the whole thing. So it took me 9 months. So while I was growing my baby, I was growing my book. And then, but when she was born, it got put in a box and put away, and nothing has happened with it for the last 20 odd years. And this year I set myself the goal of bringing it back out and trying to get it published. Wow. So I'm in the process of working with an editor at the moment, and my challenge to myself is to get it published by the end of the year.
I can't wait to hear about it. And Anne, I'd really love, once you do publish the book, to come back into our group and actually share a link so people can also read it. I'd really love to hear about it.
Oh, thank you.
And I know that you and I actually did talk about it in the background, you know, should we wait with the interview or not? And then we both decided, no, the story is really beautiful. I really want to share it in our group because there is so much hope and healing in your story as well. It's not just the, you know, my life fell apart and it was horrible. I love what you did with it. And I love that you share all of it, you know, even though, no, I didn't feel better, you know, it was still hard and I did still grieve. And there's all so much reality and truth in that, and not trying to make things look better in hindsight, you know. And I really love that. I honor your honesty, your truth, and that you share that with us. Gives a lot. What do you do with your life these days? What is it that you do for work these days?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. I'll be very quick.
That's okay.
So when we moved to Australia, well, actually after we went back to the UK and everything, and I never.
How long were you in Spain? Just so we get that.
3 years. We were three years in Spain.
Wow.
And then
back to the UK.
We were in London for 8.
Yeah.
And when I was in London, I got a job. I actually went to study world religions, believe it or not, because I got really interested in I had come across Hinduism and Buddhism, and then I had these Catholic nuns, and all of that sparked an interest in me. And I got a job in pastoral care in a high school in the UK when my youngest started school, and it was
Yeah.
working with teachers and students who were feeling a bit lost and needed somebody to talk to, and needed,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to set goals and for themselves
Yeah.
and things. So when I came to Australia, I actually didn't work for the first 6 years because my husband traveled, and my kids were still young, and I just volunteered again.
You've got 2 daughters, is that
Yes,
right?
yes, yeah. Yes.
How old are
And
they now?
they're 21 and 23.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a huge story at some point I'll share with you one-on-one about how I've managed to impact their lives, you know, and show them that life's tough for everybody.
Love it.
You know, we all struggle on different days and different ways, but we all struggle. So I hit 50, menopause. I got really that kind of lost alone. What's my life all about? Feeling again, because I think we go through stages. Nothing stays great forever. I mean, nothing's bad forever either. But I think we're constantly having to reevaluate where we're at in life. And so I reached out to see if there were other women in their 50s who felt the same, and started a meetup group. And from that, those women started to ask if I could help them. And I had studied NLP and positive psychology. And then they asked if I would coach them individually, because they didn't want to be sharing everything in the group all the time. Yeah. And so my business was born. I didn't really start out to have a business, but it became a coaching business. And I still do that to this day. So I work mainly with women to help them overcome their limiting beliefs and get them on the right track in life. And
I cannot thank you enough for being here, for sharing your story. So
sorry if I've gone on too much. I feel it's been too much.
No, that's absolutely fine. No. I would have stopped you if it was too much. So absolutely not. Okay. I really, really value everything that you shared with us. And I actually think that we need to get you back once you do publish your book. We're just going to do another interview and talk a little bit more about your daughters, everything that you just said. Maybe that's another story. Let's do that. And I'll hold you to it. So I'd really love to have you back by the end of the year. So here's your accountability for finishing the book by then. I've got to get that book done. The entire world is listening now. So Anne, please feel free. I always ask everyone, please feel free to come back into the group and share underneath the interview the links how people can get in touch with you. I'm sure there are people listening to this going like, I really want to touch base with this woman. I really want to hear a bit more about the work that she offers. So please feel free to share the links how people can get in touch with you. And as for the book, of course, come back to this interview and share the link as well. But we will do another interview to talk about the book once it's out. So for now, I just want to say thank you so much for your open and honesty here, and for being here and spending the time with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been a privilege.
Awesome. You have a beautiful day, and we will have Anne back in a few months. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. This is Anne and Marie signing off. Bye for now.
Bye.